My magazine represents the social group of males and females in their age group of about 16 to 25 and maybe some older people, depending on their musical tastes. The social group that my magazine represents is quite young because the bands I have chosen to feature are quite modern and currently making music that the target audience will listen to, and maybe some more underground bands that they haven't heard of but may like. Also, the images that I have used relate to the youthful target market of my magazine, as the bands and artists that are featured are generally the same age or a bit older than the readers, and therefore are someone that the readers can aspire to be like. I also think that the use of colour helps to target the younger social group, as I have used vibrant colours contrasting against dark backgrounds, which is a similar style to the style that the target demographic would perhaps wear or expect to see on an album cover of a band they like. Another way in which I targeted specific social groups is through the language I used in my magazine. For example, the magazine section title, "Onto a Winner," is a phrase used by someone that I know who would be classed as the target market for my magazine. As well as that, I used words such as awesome throughout, which would be expected from the social group I targeted. After researching different media institutions that distribute news and print media, it became clear to me that there are a few major companies that control everything to do with magazines in a conglomerate. So to find one of these major companies that would be best suited to distributing a magazine like mine, I looked at the magazines that I used for research and my planning to see which companies had distributed them. After a while of searching, I found 3 companies: Market Force, who distribute Rock Sound, IPC for NME, and Bauer Media, who distribute Kerrang magazine. I researched Market Force first and found out that they are actually owned by the much larger company IPC. After a bit more looking into IPC, I found out that they distribute many magazines and other print media, but only 1 or 2 music-related magazines. Next to be researched was Bauer Media, who not only distribute Kerrang, but many other magazines such as Q and Mojo. And Bauer Media owns several radio stations. After conducting a bit more research into the institutions, I came to the decision that Bauer Media Group would probably be best to distribute my magazine, as although they have one rock magazine already, I think that mine is significantly different to Kerrang, and they have a control over other areas of media such as radio, which would benefit the distribution of my own magazine. The audience for my media product would most likely be 14 to 21-year-olds, as that was the most common age group that answered in my questionnaire that I conducted before the production of my magazine. From looking at my questionnaire results, I can also deduct that the readership of my magazine are most likely to enjoy rock alternative music, which is represented by the way I featured bands that fall into that genre, and through the conventions that I used in my magazine, such as distorted fonts. I would expect that the audience of my magazine would be of both genders, as I try to make the magazine appeal to both males and females. Although my magazine does have elements that appeal to both genders, I could have perhaps included a female artist in with the rest of the bands that I chose. Although rock music is a genre that is heavily dominated by men, there are a few female acts that are breaking through, such as Hayley Williams from Paramore and Christina Scabia from Lacuna Coil, so it might have been an idea to cover an act similar to these for the female fans of the magazine to aspire to be. Before I started my magazine, I looked back at the research into other magazines that I conducted, and I went over the results from my questionnaire and focus group so I could get the right conventions that I needed and find out what the readers of the magazine wanted from the magazine. From my questionnaire and focus group, I learned much about the target audience and what they expected to see from a music magazine of their preferred genre, and what they would like to see from it. I used these ideas so that I could create a magazine that catered for the wants and needs of the target demographic. I started by using a main image of a band on the front cover, as was specified by the target market when they were asked about what they would expect to see on the front cover of a magazine. Free gifts were also heavily featured in the magazine, with 3 free posters included in the magazine, and the chance of winning merchandise, private gigs, signed albums, and many other amazing prizes. And let's face it, if you like the genre, you wouldn't pass off the chance to win at least one of the prizes, as there is such a variety. Another way in which I appealed to my target demographic was through the bands that I featured in the magazine. On the front cover, there were many names of different modern bands that the target audience are likely to be listening to. And if they see the name of a band that they like on the front cover, they are more likely to buy it to find out what the magazine has to say about them. Another way in which I used the questionnaire to ensure that my magazine was what the readership would want to read, so the magazine would appeal to them, is how I used the features that they wanted to see and focused the magazine more on the ones that they preferred. During the process of creating my magazine, I learned that the right computer and the right software is paramount to the production of a magazine. To produce my front cover and my contents page, I used Adobe Photoshop CS3 and CS4, which are programs I am fairly familiar with from graphic design, so I know how to use them fairly well. Photoshop is probably the best program to use to produce a front cover, as there is minimal text, and Photoshop is great for editing the images and adding other effects that you may want to use to help your magazine stand out from the rest. To produce my double page spread, I used InDesign CS3, which I was reluctant to use at first, as I had never used it before and I wasn't sure how it worked, but once I started to use it, I got the hang of it and found it easy and very useful for the production of a magazine. InDesign is good for magazine production, as you can set out the amount of columns and fit the text to them easily, and format it so that it fills out all the columns. Another good feature about InDesign is that you can type the information onto Microsoft Word first, and then import it from InDesign, to ensure that everything is spelled correctly and that it makes sense. Although, I still had to use Photoshop to design the background for the double page spread, as InDesign is not best suited for editing images. From the preliminary task to my final product, I learned that I needed to spend more time on the layout of the text in front of the images so that they fit together and do not disrupt each other. Looking back at my preliminary task, I can see that I did not spend enough time setting out the text in a place that wouldn't interrupt the picture, as the headline, "Chairman of the Board," cut over the shoulder of the head student and made the text a bit harder to read. Whereas on the final product, I moved the text into an area that was mainly one block colour,